This is Joe Pullman from craftworking.net. I'm putting together a series of videos on upgrading a data center. Currently, I have a data center that's running about 2 years now. It's old, antiquated equipment, so I'm going to upgrade it to something much more current. I started this upgrade planning it back in October, early October. After much research and looking around, I've decided to go with Supermicro. It's going to be a 6018R WTR, two of them, and I'm also going to upgrade the SAN as well, or at least one of them. Currently, the SAN network that I've got consists of two SAN devices. One is a SAN's digital, and the other one is something I put together from parts, and both of them are running 15 terabytes and a RAID 5 configuration. One of them, the one I built from scratch, is going to be replaced by a Supermicro 12-bay 2U server. It's going to have 4 processors in it, and it's also going to have 24 gig of RAM. My first order of business was to look at upgrading from VMware 5.5 to 6.0. Currently, the server that I have does not support vSphere 5.5 or 6.0, so it will definitely need to be replaced. The first order of business is to basically look at the VMware hardware compatibility guide. On this guide, it will give you what VMware is supporting as far as hardware goes. This is a big decision on what hardware is going to be used for the upgrade. After I've completed that and found out that what hardware that I was looking at was supported, after I verify that the equipment that I'm getting is actually on the hardware compatibility guide for VMware, I first called VMware to see which vendors or which suppliers are actually partnered with VMware. This is important for support considerations, since VMware doesn't actually do any support anymore. It is all done through the third-party vendors. When talking to VMware, they recommended that I go with CDW for the hardware. After that, I made a call to CDW and was assigned an account manager. This was probably a week into after first starting this upgrade process. This is where things started turning south on me. After I received a account manager from CDW, I was on the phone at length with him, talking about exactly what hardware was available, what hardware I could get and from them, and also licensing for VMware. I have been having difficulty getting the quotes accurate and getting the right prices accurate. So after several weeks of talking to them on the phone and explaining to me what my budget was and what I could actually do with the server as far as installing memory and processors and anything else that I needed, we did come up with a quote. We did come up with a plan of action on how to do this, and this was November 9th. So it was a month with talking with CDW and getting the quotes and the orders and everything to actually come up with a bill of materials for which they could do. One of the problems I've had with CDW is that the fact that they actually put together a order and decided that they would actually build the server and then ship it to me when it was fully built and completed and tested. However, what they did do is ship the memory to me without the server, so I'm sitting here with 128 gig of memory and no server. So after talking to them, they said, well, ship it back. Did not ship it back. I said I'll install the memory myself. Just take the memory off the new memory, because they added memory because I was doing an RMA. So they're going to basically build the server, test the server with memory, I guess, from spare parts, and make sure that everything is working. And when I get it, I will install the memory myself and go from there. One of the considerations I've decided on when upgrading this data center is that I'm going to upgrade the networking as well. Currently, I'm using a off-the-shelf consumer-grade managed switch, an Cisco SG300. Very good switch. It's 20 ports, and it served me fine for the 2 years that I've been running this data center up until now. However, with the current setup I've got, I'm quickly running out of ports. I'm also looking at upgrading it to 10 gigabits per second Ethernet. So the SG300 definitely will not support 10 gig. So I was looking around for options for that. In order to upgrade to 10 gig, I have basically two choices. I can either go with two 1U switches and then stack them together, one switch being a 1 gig Ethernet connections and the other being 10 gig Ethernet connections. However, looking at my options for this, whether I go with Cisco or Juniper or anybody else, is that these switches are extremely expensive. In order to get me to 10 gig plus the 48 gig Ethernet, I'm going to have to basically spend at least $5,000. Looking around at my options, I've decided to go with the Cisco 6500E switch. This switch can support 10 gig Ethernet cards. It can support 1 gig Ethernet cards and several modules for services. So the next order of business is how much of a switch I need to get in the 6500 in order to get this up and running. In the 6500 series line, I have a choice between 4 slots, 6 slots, 9 slots, or even 13 slots. When I was looking around at this, I've decided to go with a 6-slot back chassis. The 6506 chassis that I've selected basically will support all the cards that I need. So what I did is I looked around and found a good vendor off of eBay actually, and basically what I've got is I put together a switch with 2 supervisor modules, one 48 port 1 gig module, and 2 10 gig 4-port 10 gig Ethernet modules. This will leave me 1 slot free for expansion. The reason I went with the 4-port 10 gig Ethernet cards is the fact that in the 6500 series line supervisor modules that I need, it has a built-in 40 gig fabric on it. Basically what this means is that each card that I put into this, it has a connection speed of up to 40 gigabits per second. If I went with a 8-port or 16-port 10 gig Ethernet module, that means I would have to get into oversubscription. And I would not receive the full bandwidth on all ports of the line card. Cisco makes a 4-port 10 gig Ethernet card, which is perfect, so I would run into no oversubscription, and I have enough ports on the switch to handle 2 of these. Designing the Ethernet network going from 1 gig network to supporting 10 gig Ethernet, I looked at what I could put on 10 gig. I basically have decided that the SANs, both SANs, will run 10 gig. So I'm going to be running 2 10 gig Ethernet ports into that and doing a port channel which for a combined Ethernet speed of 20 gigabits per second. Also, the servers that I'm getting are going to be equipped with 10 gig 10 gig Ethernet modules. So from the data store network, I will be supporting 10 gig. The VMs to the external network, such as the Ethernet to the modems and access points and anything else in between, will remain 1 gig. I'm now going to take you through the data center as it's currently built. I'm starting this videos after I installed the new switch, but the data center servers and SAN equipment has not arrived yet, so what you see is basically what it was when I started this, so except for the new switch. Okay, here's my data center. I'm going to take you through it. So down here we have our X4440 Sun. This is the one with 4 processors in it, 4 cores, 16 total processors. Moving up, we've got the firewalls, which I'll explain later, and on the top we have the switch. Here we have the SANS Digital SAN. It's got 6 3 terabyte drives in it for a total of 15 terabytes in the RAID 5 configuration. After thinking about it, I think this is the SAN that's going to be replaced. Okay, here we have the 2 devices. One is the AT&T modem and the other one is the access point that I'm using. I am not using the AT&T modem to do any Wi-Fi. It is strictly a modem and nothing else. This modem is configured in pass-through mode or layer 2 mode, so there is no IP addressing, DHCP, or NAT. Okay, here's the other SAN. It's the one that I built from spare parts, an old PC that I had. It's got 6 3 terabyte drives in it for a total of 15 terabytes in the RAID 5 configuration as well. Here's the DMZ firewall. It is a Cisco 3745 set up in an iOS zone-based firewall configuration. Those 2 Ethernet ports are for traffic and the lower one is used for management. Okay, here we have the main firewall. This is a Cisco 2811 set up again as an iOS firewall, zone-based, and it is those 2 Ethernet connections are for traffic. The one on the right is actually set up as a trunk to trunk the management and the inside firewall, or the inside port of the firewall, and the right one over there is for the outside, which basically goes to the internet. This is the Cisco SG300 20-port gigabit Ethernet switch that I originally installed when I built the data center. It's got 20 ports on it, and it's been working fine for quite some time now. But this will be replaced. Here's the CAT 6500E. As you can see, I've started running the fiber optic cable for the 10 gig network, and the other 2 cables on the upper left are just temporary cables used to trunk the network back to the SG300. Taking a look at the modules, this is the 48 port 1 gig module that is the latest from Cisco. It's a 6748 Ethernet module. It does support 40 gig backplane speeds, so there is a little bit of oversubscription, but I'm never going to use it since I'm never going to have the full 48 ports. Taking a closer look at the 10 gig Ethernet modules, these are X6704 modules. Each module can handle 40 gigabits to the SOUP module. The ones on the connections on the far right are for one SAN, the top one being one port channel and the other one being the other port in the port channel. The second one over is going to go to the other SAN, one port, the top being one port channel, the bottom being the other port channel. The ones on the left on the top are going to go to one server, one being the VMware network and the other one being the storage network. And the bottom one is going to go to with the same configuration to the other VMware server. So that was a look at the data center as it's currently built. In the upcoming videos, I will be demonstrating on the actual install, configuration, and deployment of the new data center.